Hello and welcome back to Unearth the Past, a podcast that delves into the lives of interesting people with me, your host, Dr. Michala Hulme. This week we are joined by one of Britain's best loved actors. He has starred in a range of shows, from the BBC's multi-award-winning series Luther to HBO's Emmy-nominated show Strike Back. You may also know him from Hollyoaks, Good Cop, The Gathering, or my personal favourite, the BBC's £10 Poms. As if that's not enough, he is also a former 2-time Thai boxing world champion. Ladies and gentlemen, this week we are joined by the award-winning actor Warren Brown. Warren, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Are you excited?
Excited / nervous.
Nervous.
Yeah.
So, should we start then with your dad's side?
Mm-hmm.
So, what did you know before this about your dad's side of the tree? Did you know anything?
Not a great deal on my dad's side.
No.
I know a little bit on my mum's side, but my dad's, I guess, a little bit of backstory. His mum died when he was quite young.
Yeah.
And he didn't have a great relationship with his father. I think there was a couple of times as I've got older that they met up and kind of nearly rekindled a relationship, but it didn't quite see it through. So remember meeting my granddad very, very young, and then I think maybe around about 17, I think he actually came to watch one of my Thai boxing fights. And then we didn't, again, for whatever reason, wasn't seen through. And then there was a period where actually me and my dad were talking, and although his dad wasn't great, I was interested just to know a bit more about where we came from, or know my dad's side of the history. And we never actually got around to doing that. And then my dad took ill quite a few years ago, and then for the last kind of 5-6 years, he's been in a home and has not been kind of fully compos mentis. So again, those kind of conversations
just didn't happen.
Kind of weren't able to happen. And I guess then, you think, oh, what can I do on my own? But then when an opportunity presents itself, when an expert gets in touch, so not a great deal. Like I say, I knew he, when we were really young, my dad had a brother and a sister that we saw a little bit when we were kids, but they both passed away as well. So what are we going to find out here is the question.
Are you ready? So were you curious? Because I know years ago you took an Ancestry DNA test, didn't you?
I did.
To find out a bit more about your ethnicity.
Mm-hmm.
And do you remember what that came back saying where you were from?
I remember not really believing it.
Really?
Well, just because there was a large percent of Irish, a large percent of Scottish, and kind of not sure kind of on my dad's side, but then when I did another one and it came through, and it was kind of very, very similar. So okay, all right, I believe then. But chatted to my mum and chatted to my uncle, who's quite well into his ancestry tree, and he can't seem to find anyone Irish or Scottish in there, or doesn't seem to think there's anyone Irish, Scottish on my mum's side. So yeah, I mean, they're accurate. You work with them a lot.
Yeah. You have got Irish in your tree.
Yeah.
Yeah. You also, which won't come as a shock to you, have West African in your tree on your dad's side.
Well, this was again one of the main things is I knew that there was something, but not actually knowing specifically where.
Okay, well, should we pick up then? Should
Yeah.
we start with your dad's side? Okay, so I'm going to start with your granddad, and then we're going to work backwards. Is that all right? So your grandfather was called Martin Percival Brown.
Yeah.
I'm sure you knew that, Martin Brown.
Yeah.
And your grandmother was Edith Kathleen Green.
Mm-hmm.
And the first document I'm going to show you is their marriage certificate.
Mm-hmm.
And I wondered if you can, the handwriting is terrible, if you can try and read it out or try and make out some of it, that'd be great. If you can't, don't worry.
Okay.
Go on.
I don't wear glasses, but maybe I should.
I did actually ring him up yesterday, by the way,
You
folks,
did.
and say,
You
if you
did.
wear glasses, bring them, because now would be the time.
And I said, oh no, I don't wear glasses.
Yeah.
Martin Percival Brown, bachelor. Isn't the old writing really fancy?
Isn't it?
Really hard to decipher. Rank or profession, what does that say? Market man, food stuff.
And fancy goods.
Yeah, because I think he might have had shops or something. Okay, and Edith Kathleen Green. You obviously know what that says. What does that say?
Yeah, so she's a hat maker.
Okay.
So she made hats.
I like hats.
Does it tell you where they lived? It should say, does it say Darcy Street?
58 Darcy Street, Manchester. Is that where they were?
So
I'm assuming that's where my granddad was living.
That's right, yeah.
And then Robert
Street, is it?
Manchester also.
So I've actually got an image for you around the time of when your granddad lived there of Darcy Street.
Oh, wow.
So that is what Darcy Street looked like back in the day.
Where is Darcy Street in relation to where we are now?
So it's towards like the Hulme Moss Side area of Manchester. And then Robert Street, just in case you're curious.
Yeah.
That is the street, and that's where your grandmother worked at that hat factory.
Wow. So I thought these were just for show, just for set decoration. But
no.
Carry on, Doctor, carry on.
I'm going to keep going. Now, there's something else that the marriage certificate tells us, and that should be who the dads are.
Yes. Father's name, Percival Brown, deceased. So that was your great-granddad.
Yeah.
And then John Green.
I did a search for Percival Brown. There are no Percival Browns that I could find that I could link to your tree whatsoever.
So it's a short episode then?
This is really quick. It's going to finish in 2 minutes. So then I went to the library, and I think I spoke to you about this. I looked at the electoral register of where he was living when he got married, your granddad, on Darcy Street, to see if there was anybody else in that household that had the surname Brown that I could then link to your granddad. Obviously not, no. Everyone else had like a different surname. Okay. So I was going to ring you at this point and go, Warren,
we can't do it.
I can't go any further with your tree. I can't find anybody with a dad called Percival Brown, you know, with a son called Martin Brown. I just can't do it. Like, this is going to be the quickest tree. And the first time I've failed. But then, what I did, I spoke to my amazing friends at Ancestry at ProGen. Hi, Jenny, Dr. Jennifer Doyle. And she said, look, you crack on with the Manchester records. My team will have a look at your DNA. Mm-hmm. Right? So they went through all your DNA matches and built the family trees of your DNA matches because you'd taken the Ancestry DNA test. And you had a distant DNA match. And your distant DNA match, it was like a fourth cousin. You shared, I think it was like 68 centimorgans. So DNA is measured in centimorgans. The closer...
That's why I saw that and just thought centimetres. What, What's a centimorgan?
No, I like it. Yeah, small c, big M. So DNA is measured in centimorgans. So the more centimorgans you share with somebody, the closer you are related in theory, right? So it was 68, so it was quite small. Anyway, this person had the surname Cox, who were based in America. So they did their family tree. And they discovered that their great-great-grandmother was a lady called Veronica Cox. Mm-hmm. And Veronica Cox was born on the 1950 American census in Salford. So that obviously then got us thinking. And obviously, you know, we're buzzing at this point because we're thinking, well, we know you share DNA with a lady called Veronica Cox from Salford. Who is she? Mm-hmm. Then we came across her obituary in the newspaper. I wondered if you could have a quick read of this and just summarise it for our listeners.
Veronica Cox, daycare director, died Monday, March 13th, 2000. In Plainfield, she was the director of the South 2nd Street Youth Centre Daycare in Plainfield. Veronica was born in Salford, England, and lived in Manchester, England prior to moving to Plainfield over 50 years ago. She was a 50-year member of St Mark's Episcopal Church. She devoted her life to the care of children and serving others. As a housewife, she cared for children in her home. When she began a career at the South 2nd Street Centre, she held various positions in social services, In 1981, she became the director and held this position until her death. She worked at the centre for over 30 years. She was a former Club Scout, Den mother and Girl Scout leader. She was active in her community as community organiser. She was predeceased by a husband of 39 years, Cecil Warren Cox Sr., in 1987. Surviving are her daughter, Jacqueline, and 5 sons, Timothy, Martin, Brian, Robert, Sean Cox. Her brothers, Martin Percival Brown of Prestwich, England. So that's my granddad.
It's actually granddad. It's actually granddad's sister.
Okay. And James and a sister, Moira Davis of England. She was loved and cherished by many nieces, nephews, and a host of other relatives and friends. So that's my granddad's sister.
When we did a bit of digging, we found out that she was born in Salford. She's your granddad's sister.
Mm-hmm.
She married a Mr. Cox over here, and then they went over and had a new life in America. I've got a picture of her if you'd like to see it.
Yeah. So this is, what's her name again?
Veronica.
So her maiden name would have been Brown.
It is Brown.
Yeah. It was. It's mad. There's a couple, not many, photographs at my mum's house, so that I've seen pictures of my granddad, but not of like any of his relatives or anything.
Because obviously we were able to find her obituary, which then gave us the link, I was then able to find her birth certificate because I knew when she died, and it had her birth date on some of her American official records, that I was then able to find her birth certificate, which told me that her mum's maiden name was Kundal, right? That then enabled me to find your grandfather's birth certificate, and I'm going to show you that now.
Where the hell did you get all this stuff from? Shoot.
I don't know if you can pick out any bits of information from it.
Mary Kathleen Brown, formerly Kundal, is that?
Yeah, so that's his mum.
That's his mum. What's this? So is the first one Walter, is it?
So that's his dad, Walter Percival Brown.
Wow. Strong name. Stoker Merchant Ships. Now, is that the mum or is that the dad?
So that's the dad's occupations. He was working on the ships.
What's this? Bullboat, Salford.
So that's where he was born.
Address?
Yeah, so that's where he was born, which is in the Greengate area of Salford, which if you know Manchester Cathedral, and you kind of cross over the road, and if you were heading towards Salford, that is sort of the Greengate area of Salford.
Like, because I obviously grew up in Warrington, but went to uni at Salford.
Yeah.
And lived in Salford, lived in the old Royal Hospital.
Yeah.
For a bit. And then lived in city centre after I left uni for a bit. And yeah, I know there was a minute when you were saying, oh, we could come and do this in London, but I just wanted to come back to Manchester.
Yeah.
And be...
So your great-grandparents then, Walter Percival Brown and Mary Kathleen Kundal, they had 3 children. They had Joan Kathleen. She was born in 1924. They had Veronica Percival, who we know went to America. And they had your granddad, Martin Percival. He was born in 1930. Now, you may be wondering why Joan Kathleen Brown wasn't mentioned in Veronica's obituary. And that's because she died of pneumonia when she was 18. So that's why she isn't mentioned in the obituary. She was buried on the 26th of November 1942, and she is in a common grave, a public grave, in the Roman Catholic section of Weast Cemetery. A lot of this side of your family is in Weast Cemetery. Now, we've already mentioned about your granddad, and we've seen his birth certificate. I've actually got the marriage certificate of your great-grandparents, which I'm going to show you now. So I wondered if you could read some of this out for us. So this is Walter Brown and Mary. It should be Kathleen, but it says Catherine Kundal.
Marriage solemnised in the district of Salford. So they were, okay, Walter Brown, Mary. And that's Kathleen Kundal. bachelor, spinster, ship's fireman.
Yep.
So the 22nd of October 1921, Walter Brown.
Yep.
Mary Kathleen Cundall. So that's my great-granddad.
That's your great-granddad and your great-grandmother.
Wow.
And then right on the end, it will tell you who is your great-great-granddad.
Okay, so Walter Brown's dad, also Walter Brown, farmer, and Mary's dad, Henry Cundall, a hawker.
Yeah.
That's hawking goods, nothing to do with...
That's nothing to do with birds of prey. No, but I like the fact you thought that, somewhere in Salford...
That's why I like Kes.
They were shooting birds out of the sky. Probably were, actually, but yeah. There's something that you might not have picked up on, actually, from your granddad's birth certificate. And that is that his dad is deceased when he's born.
Okay.
I've actually got a record that explains what happened to Walter Brown, which I'm going to show you now. So this is his death certificate, and he died on the 18th of July, 1930. And his son was born on the 24th of July of the same year.
Oh, gosh. 32 years old. There's a lot of young deaths in this family.
Yeah.
The 18th of July 1930, my granddad was born.
So your granddad was born on the 24th of July 1930.
Is that pneumonia again?
Yeah, pneumonia.
Widow of deceased, present at death. So would he have died while he was away?
No, so he died here.
Right.
So there was 6 days. She was obviously really heavily pregnant, your great-grandmother, literally about to give birth, which she does 6 days later, and sadly passed away of pneumonia. He's buried at Wee Cemetery. Again, he's buried in a common grave. But I have got a record that I'd like to show you that relates to his funeral.
Prince Emenu, West African chief at Manchester funeral. Prince Emenu, the West African chief who has been responsible for the inauguration in Manchester of the Negro Justice Association, today attended the funeral of Mr. Walter Brown of Greengate, Salford, one of the members of the association. He was a member of a distinguished family in British West Africa, said Prince Emmanuel to a representative of the Manchester Evening News today. And because of his rank, he was entitled in our community to the title of Honourable. He was a faithful member of the Negro community. The Negro Justice Association has been formed to help Negroes in Manchester to find work and generally to look after their interests. Wowzers. Speaking to a representative of the Manchester Evening News, I used to hand out free MEN Manchester Evening News papers in Piccadilly Gardens.
Did you?
Yes.
So this document then says to me that in West Africa, he is from a very prominent family, so much so that if he was back in West Africa, he would be called Honourable. So what we know about him is your great-granddad is from a very honourable, high-ranking family.
Do these titles get passed down? Can I now be Honourable?
I imagine if you go there, you would be called Honourable Warren Brown. I'm going to show you the 1921 census, because he is on that census.
Who's Alice Walker?
So that's who he's lodging with.
It says wife, then crossed out.
Yeah.
That's not his wife.
That's definitely not his wife.
Okay. Manchester British. Sierra Leone. There's something town there.
Freetown.
Wow. It's crazy because you don't know what you're actually looking for, but when you've just pointed that out there, yes, Sierra Leone.
Can I take that back one moment? So, he's from Freetown in Sierra Leone. What he does on this form is he makes a mistake. And the mistake he makes is he puts his full date of birth on, and it's actually not needed on a census. All that's needed is how old you are. But he puts his full date of birth on, which then enables me to find his Merchant Navy seaman record. And that, I won't pass it over, but basically that's what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that tells me where he was born, and it corresponds with the date of birth.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to see a picture of him?
Yes, please.
Such a great granddad.
Wowzers. I can see, like I say, I've met my granddad, but it's many, many years ago, and seen pictures. And there's a bit there, but so this would have been for his.
Yeah, so this is his merchant seaman record. Yeah, so you saw page 1. Basically, that is page 2. The only reason I was able to get that picture was because he makes a mistake on the 1921 census.
Wowzers.
And puts his date of birth on it, which isn't needed. But thank you so much, Walter, for doing that.
Nice one, Walt. Walter's a good name.
It's a strong name, isn't it? Right, now, I'm going to keep going just because I'm conscious of time. I know it's a lot to take in, right? But we're just going to keep going. So, in terms of the Sierra Leone side, that's as much as I can do from over here. To carry that on, you would need to go over to Sierra Leone. There are some birth records that are now have been transcribed. However, he misses it by a month from his birth. So the rest of that story, you would have to go to Sierra Leone. Okay, so I'm going to keep going because obviously I'm conscious of time. So you may wonder then what happens to your great-grandmother when he passes away. Obviously, she's got the 3 children.
So he's met her in Manchester.
He's just a baby. He's met her in Salford.
Yeah.
She remarries. She remarries a gentleman called Tom Davis, and they have 2 more children. And if you remember the obituary, the 2 children are actually mentioned in in Veronica's obituary, and that's why they have the surname Davis. That's because she remarries a gentleman called Tom. Just before the war in 1939, she's living on Stoke Street, and she's bottling beer for a brewery.
We like her.
Sorry to interrupt the podcast, and it will be back in just a minute. But I would like to take the time to talk to you about an organisation that is really close to my heart, and that is The Power of One. The Power of One is a non-profit organisation founded by the fabulous Samantha Hutchinson, which supports women across the world who work in the animal welfare community. There are currently thousands of women across the globe who are fighting to improve the lives of animals and make their communities safer by reducing the spread of disease. They are working really hard to reduce the number of animals on the street through rescue, providing rehabilitation, rehoming, and spray and neutering campaigns. They are also raising awareness through education in local schools and improving public perceptions of the cities, towns, and countries in which they live. Now, this industry relies almost exclusively on public donations, and many women risk their livelihoods and, in some cases, even their lives just to be a part of it. Funding helps to create jobs, it supports families and local businesses, and provides access to education and much needed mental health support. If you get chance, and look, I know times are hard, but if you get chance, please just check out the Power of One website. I've put the details in the podcast description. And even just tell people about this organisation, this wonderful organisation, and what they are doing to help animals, and especially dogs. And if you know me, you know I love my dogs, around the world. Now back to the podcast. I'm going to stay on your dad's side. So I'm now going to go down his mum's side, which is Edith Kathleen Green, who we mentioned. We know that she's making hats. She is the daughter of John Green and Edith Smith. They're your great-grandparents. In 1939, just before World War II, your grandmother is living with her parents on Tempest Street, which is in Manchester. Your great-grandparents, they got married in 1931 at St. Silas Church, which is in Ardwick. Sadly, no longer there anymore, but it's a very beautiful church. John Green is 24 years old and he is a labourer, and Edith Smith is 25 years old and she is a machinist. Her father is listed as a retired postman. And unfortunately, John Green doesn't have a dad listed on his marriage certificate, and that's because his mum Lily had him out of wedlock. So we don't actually know who his dad is. However, Edith Smith, your great-grandmother, is keeping a secret when she gets married. And this only came out because you took an Ancestry DNA test. It's all your fault.
Oh, God.
So when she walked down the aisle that day, the secret is that she already had a daughter. So your grandmother has a half-sister, right? That I don't know if your grandmother ever knew that she had a half-sister. I doubt it, but she may have done. She was a little girl. She was born in 1927. So this was before she marries John Green. She has this daughter. And in 1939, Edith agrees that the family could adopt the daughter. She has the girl in 1927. She's not married at this point. She adopts the girl to basically a local family. I think it was an informal adoption, probably a family that she knew, or that's what her daughter believes because she's reached out on Ancestry. So because her daughter's still alive.
Oh, God.
So she has this little girl. She, I think, entrusts her with her family, and they're a lovely family. They're a local family in Ardwick. And then in 1939, by this point, obviously, she is married.
Yeah.
She agrees that the child can be formally adopted. What's interesting for me is on the birth record, when she has this girl out of wedlock, she puts her occupation, and it's not machinist, so it's not what she is when she gets married. It's dancer.
Okay.
So she is a stage performer.
Right.
She's not the only one that's a stage performer. Her sister is a stage performer and her dad is a musician.
No way.
So even though her dad is a postman, I've tracked his career and I know that before he was a postman, he was a musician. Her sister is constantly, she's never here. She's always on the stage travelling. So there is definitely a theatrical gene.
No way. Further down the line.
On that side
I also
of your
used
family.
to dance as a job in a bar in Manchester.
Did you?
Many months ago, but that's a different podcast.
Okay, yes,
Yeah.
let's not mention that. I probably went in it, at some point.
Teasers on Dean.
I do, yes.
Yeah.
Is that way?
Yeah.
Yes. I think everyone wanted a job there at the time because it was like Coyote Ugly, wasn't he? That's what it was
Very
billed
much
as.
like that, yeah.
Just sticking with that side of the family then. So Edith Smith, I found her on the 1911 census. Her parents are William Joseph Smith, who is your great-great-grandfather. He was born in 1863 in Devon. And her mum is Bridget Downey. She is your great-great-grandmother. She was born in Kerry, Ireland in 1873. Now, he's a postman because I've already mentioned it was on her marriage certificate. He was a postman. But before that, we know he was a performer. He was a musician.
So this is
your great-great-grandparents. So this is your dad's
So this is where the Irish side
on
is
your
then.
dad's
on
side.
My dad's mum's side, obviously, that he knew, but she died when he was young.
Yeah.
And obviously we've never known.
No.
So that's the Irish side.
So that is the Irish side. So we've mentioned that he was a musician and he was also a postman in later life. But before that, he was in the army. And it kind of explains, because when I look at where all the kids are born, Warren, they're born all over the shop.
Yeah.
Right? So Edith's siblings, like her sister Kathleen, who's a dancer, is born in Aldershot. Her eldest brother is born in Preston. They're all over the place. And I've got a couple of his army records I want to show you, if that's all right. This is one of his, this is his medical record, but it gives you sort of a bit of information about him. And it also, you should be able to make out there his trade or occupation. And this is from 1890.
Wow.
This is your great-great-granddad.
How the hell have you found this stuff? Again, wonderfully difficult writing.
Yes, terrible.
Birthplace, Plymouth, Devon. Age, last birthday, 27. Trade or occupation, musician. I can't play anything.
Can you not?
No.
Not like I thought you'd be like playing a
I've always
guitar or
threatened
something.
to. I stole a guitar from a set once.
And what happened?
And
No.
it just looked good in me flat for a while.
Yeah. Can you sing, though?
Can I sing?
Yeah. Are we ever going to get you do musical theatre?
I'd love to do musical. I absolutely love musical
Really?
theatre. But I can't sing that level. No. I've got friends who are great actors, musicians that are in musical theatre.
Yeah.
And I would have loved to, but no.
Can I grab that back 1 second? I've got another. So these are some of the things that he got ill with while he was in the war. So I don't know if you can make out. So in the middle bit here, Warren, are some of the illnesses he has, and he has one reoccurring quite a lot. I don't know if you can kind of make it out.
Doesn't say gonorrhea, does it? Does that say gonorrhea? Gonorrhea again. Oh, gonorrhea, bronchitis. And are these genuinely illnesses, or is he...
So this is just his medical record of times when he needed hospital treatment.
Oh, God, so it's, yeah. Bronchitis and a couple of things I can't make out. But you just wanted me to make sure that I knew.
I just wanted you to know that he had gonorrhea.
Multiple cases of gonorrhea.
On quite a few different occasions.
That's hilarious.
So I'm going to keep going with him for the time being. So he was born in Devon. I've already mentioned that. But his dad, believe it or not, because I was able to go back a bit further, was actually born in Chester.
Right.
So I think because they were all military men, they just moved around an awful lot. But I think, like when you look into your family tree, I think definitely that showman side, the being on the stage and the theatre side, definitely is echoed in that part of your tree. I'm going to just quickly touch on your mum's side because I am conscious of time. So your great-grandfather on that side is Edward Cretney. Is that how you pronounce it?
Cretney, yeah. I knew him when I was a kid, and knew me mum's mum Maureen.
Yeah. So the Cretney side of your tree, they're from the Isle of Man.
Right.
When we go back, your great-great-grandfather, John James Cretney, he was born in 1857, and his wife was called Mary Ledbetter. They were the ones that moved from the Isle of Man to Ashton upon Mersey in Sale in around 1900.
Right.
The Ledbetters were actually fishermen from Fleetwood, believe it or not. So there's definitely fishing in your genes.
That didn't come down to me. I think I've been fishing once on a stag do.
How did that go?
Not very good. Sea fishing, 8 hours worth of sea fishing. I think for 8 of those hours I was hanging onto the side throwing up.
Yeah, so it's not past that's not gone through the genes, has it? So, yeah, as I mentioned, the Ledbetters, they were fishermen from Fleetwood. Your great-great-grandmother, Mary Ledbetter, she had been married before. So before she married John James Cretney, she had married a gentleman called John Kim in 1880. So, sticking with your mum's side, we stick with your mum's dad's side. His mother was Ethel Moores. I don't know if you remember an Ethel at all.
No.
She would be your great-grandmother, I think she would be.
Yeah.
Her parents, your great-great-grandmother, was Samuel Moores, a baker, and Louisa Jane Evans. I was able to go back to your 3 times grandfather, William Moores, who was born in Middlewich, and I have a baptism record for him from 1814.
Bloody hell.
I was able to go back further than that on his mum's side. I couldn't go back any further on his dad's side because his dad's not listed. She had him out of wedlock.
Right.
If we stick with the Ethel Moores line, her mother was called Louisa Jane Evans. She would be your great-great-grandmother. Her father was Charles Evans, a joiner. He was born in 1826 and he died in 1873. And her mother was called Betsy Edgerton. I have their marriage record, but I'm not going to show you because we're short on time.
Mm-hmm.
You can see from the marriage record that Charles had been married before. He married a lady called Amelia Ashworth in 1852, but unfortunately, the year after their marriage, she died of a stroke.
Mm-hmm.
Charles's parents, which would be your 4 times great-grandfather, Evan Evans, was born in Wales.
I was just going to say, he sounds Welsh.
He was Welsh. He was a joiner, but he also owned a beer house in Salford called the Straggler's Nest. And I did find an article about him, which I'm just going to show you now. This is an article from 1848.
Blimey. Oh, bang, straight away, robbery with violence. Is this my relative? Or
It is.
I thought you said there was no criminals.
He's a victim.
Robbery with violence. A man named Patrick Plover on Friday last presented himself at the pawn shop of Mr. Taylor, Oldham Road, with a silver watch. He wanted to borrow 30 shillings on it. Suspicion being excited that he had not come by the article in an honest way. He was interrogated about it, and as he could only say in reply that he'd got it from a man in a public house in Deansgate, no way, whom he did not know, and paid 35. I'm assuming that's shillings, right?
Yeah.
He was consequently apprehended, and evidence of ownership having been traced, he was on Saturday placed in the dock at the Borough Court when Evan Evans deposed that on the night of the 17th of February he was knocked down in Edgerton Street, Hulme, by a blow on the head from behind him. On recovering his senses, he found his watch had gone. The watch now shown was the one he was robbed of. The prisoner was committed to sessions.
So that is it. I did manage to find... this is a very old book from 1850.
Mm-hmm.
And both Charles Evans and his dad, Evan Evans, are mentioned in this trade directory. So they are joiners. And obviously Evan Evans, his dad, also owns the beer house.
Mm-hmm.
So I will show you this once we have finished recording.
Yeah.
But I've just got one last question, which I always ask all my guests. If you could have dinner with anybody in your family tree tonight, who would it be and why, and what would you cook them?
Oh, gosh. Well, unfortunately, none of the relatives were great chefs, and that didn't get passed down. I don't know. I think maybe Walter.
Yeah.
In Sierra Leone.
Yeah. I bet he'd be a good cook,
I bet he'd be a great cook, yeah.
I bet he'd do amazing food.
Yeah.
Warren, thank you so much for coming on my podcast.
It's obviously there's so much information to take on, but I know obviously then I can kind of go away and look at and process it. But I'm so very grateful for you for all that work, and actually being able to just go, right, I know, because like I say, I've got had so many questions and not knowing exactly, and people go, I can see that there's something, but never knowing, and actually just to know exactly where it was and be able to see kind of when they moved over, but also that it's very Manchester through and through as well.
Oh, proper Manx through and through.
Yeah.
And there's so much more to do, by the way. So this is just literally the tip of the iceberg, I think, for your trade. There's loads more research you can do with it. But thank you so much.
No, thank you.
So that is it for this week's podcast. A huge, huge thank you to my fabulous guest, Warren Brown. Also, if you get a chance, please check out The Power of One. I've popped a link in the podcast description below. If you want to get in contact with me, you can do so via my website, which is www.michalahulme.com. Have an absolutely fantastic week researching, folks, and I shall see you again very soon. Thank you for listening.